All right, so good morning, everybody. First off, I just need to let you know, I just flew in on the red eye from San Francisco, so please do not misinterpret my subdued tone as a lack of enthusiasm. Today, ironically, in New York, I am talking about how pharma marketing can benefit from the video games industry. Ironically, my talk in San Francisco yesterday was to 1,000 game developers and executives on why they should work with the healthcare industry. So talking to them about why they should work with you. You're welcome. And I think we just heard how folks feel like you're way behind on use, how like pharma marketing is way behind on use of AI. Yes. But there is an industry that is way ahead and has lessons and experiences that are directly relevant to the work that we're doing in pharma marketing and in healthcare. We'll go over all that today. So as we continue to ask ourselves what GenAI means for us as employees in the workforce, maybe as engineers, as educators, as marketers, as regulators, there's an industry that has embraced generative AI wholeheartedly and provides lessons both promising and warning that are directly applicable to pharma. And that is the video games industry. So instead of viewing generative AI as a threat, employees in the video games industry, whether they're artists, engineers, designers, overwhelmingly view it as a healthy and welcome evolution of 3 decades of innovation. And we'll see what that looks like. Putting fear aside, the video games industry is using GenAI in ways that are directly applicable to the life sciences, both in terms of how we train AI as well as the problems we use it for. So first, a little bit about me. Before Relevate Health and LevelX, I spent my career in the video games industry, companies like LucasArts, Microsoft, and for the last decade, I've been unleashing that technology and neuroscience with a team of extremely talented game designers and developers. We've been unleashing all of that technology and neuroscience in healthcare. At LevelX, now Relevate Health Games, we use the neuroscience and the tech from the video games industry to change HCP and now patient behavior at scale and accelerate the adoption curve of new products in medicine. Whether it's breaking through the noise to help oncologists remember clinical study data or help hematologists, let's say, understand a novel MOA, we've been deploying game content to over 1 million HCPs and growing. And we work with major pharma companies like Novartis and Novo Nordisk and AstraZeneca. I think we're working with most of the top 40 now to use game technology and game neuroscience to help them sell, market, and train on their products. To really sort of change the way, if you think about like getting in the mind of, you think about HCP marketing, getting in the mind of your target audience and literally rewiring their brain. Change the way they dose, change the way they diagnose, change the way they manage patients over time. And what I should clarify is I don't sell any AI products. Okay? I'm a beneficiary of GenAI, and we've learned a lot of lessons in using GenAI to accelerate the adoption of life science products. So I'm here to basically share all these lessons with you. Technology, neuroscience, and now generative AI. So first, why is the video games industry using generative AI everywhere? I will show you. So this was the best looking video game character in 1989. And what we did in the video games industry is we grabbed onto the Moore's Law curve and we didn't let go. And so every 5 years we were able to drastically improve the quality of our characters. So when I joined Microsoft in 2001, 25 years ago, this was the best looking character we had in a video game. And my team's job was to figure out how to go from that to this. So this is Call of Duty. It's actually from a few years ago. I can actually zoom into the eye of one of the characters. This is the level of detail we're creating video game characters like as of 2 or 3 years ago. And actually, I accepted a technical Emmy on behalf of my team at Microsoft for this work. That was me. That was Jensen Huang at NVIDIA back in 2006. We were both much younger then. But the whole idea is that all of this GPU technology that is driving the AI revolution, what was it built for? Video games. You're welcome. All right, so this is what an eye looks like in a modern video game. We say, hey, healthcare, we kind of feel like we're behind the video games industry. Yeah. So again, $50 video game, this is what an eye looks like. let's sit down in front of a $250,000 ophthalmology trainer. Looks like this is before level X. It looks like it fell out of a gumball machine. For those of you that play video games, this is 1995. So if you feel behind, don't worry. All of healthcare we'll fix it. But thanks to Moore's law, every 5 years, video game hardware supports an order of magnitude more content at an order of magnitude greater detail, which creates a massive problem because the price of the game does not increase. So the only solution is you have to make your artists and your engineers 100 times more productive every 5 years. And we've been doing this for a very long time. You can't make this using tools that you used even 5 years ago. Example, like imagine you're trying to recreate the entire city of Chicago, I'm from Chicago, down to the empty soda can on the ground. You cannot do this by hand. It would take 100 years. And so in every generation, the video games industry figures out how to make its artists and designers more productive. So, for example, going from drawing pixels to robust tools that let artists model from virtual clay. But if you want to actually create a whole city this way, it also takes a really long time. So that's too inefficient. You can't model a whole city that way. So what we do is we use procedural tools. We use math, modeled off the previous generation of tools, to create complex variations and automatically place elements. And it's the output of these tools, the last generation, that we're using to train the next generation of AI-based tools for the next round of video games you'll see. So in the last generation, we perfected this idea where you could have an artist and she could just drag lines and it would just fill in the city. Or, for example, you want to, oh, hey, I'm making a level or I'm going to drive through this area. Oh, you know what, I want to move that mountain over a little bit. So you can just drag it, and using math, it'll just fill in all the detail in the middle. This is how we make games today. So the expectation of every artist in the industry is any manual work you were doing 5 years ago is going to be automated, and you're going to continually move up the stack and be more productive. If for some reason you're doing the same thing you were doing 5 years ago, something's wrong with you, you're likely to lose your job. So at Relevate Health Games, we're using these same mathematical procedural techniques to create content to train doctors. So in this example, we have a mathematical model of plaque psoriasis that allows an artist to just turn dials, right, with a dermatologist looking over her shoulder and create any variation of the disease. So you want to make the skin cracks deeper, you want to make the region between them look wetter, you want to change the scaling pattern, it all just emerges from the model. And so we use this technology and with our dermatology clients to train doctors' brains how to diagnose and how to treat. And we use it to create imagery that can literally generate any skin disease on any body part, on skin of any color, and under any lighting environment. So none of these images that I'm showing, none of these are real. These are all generated by our video game engine mathematically. And we use the same procedural techniques to model body movement for our neurology clients. So we have mathematical models that allow an artist to overlay a tremor at any frequency or any amplitude on any body type or any body part. So we can train neurologists how to recognize the difference between, let's say, a Parkinsonian tremor and a tardive dyskinesia tremor to determine which brand they're indicated for. And it's this procedurally mathematically generated content that we're using to train our next gen AI systems. And that's not just Relevate Health Games, and the games industry in general. So this is an example of real-time AI generated character animation trained on procedural data. So this is what your video game characters are going to start looking like. Let's see, what is it? It's November. So holiday next year. Oh, here's your sneak preview. And of course, we get to use at Relevate Health Games, we get to use these GenAI methods to create better training data to train doctors, more realistic patients that can convey more subtle symptoms that you can also just have conversations with, to whether it's convincing those patients to adhere to a regimen, to escalate therapy, to actually use it to more accurately diagnose them. You can also treat them live. All right, so we'll try to do a quick demo here. I don't know how the internet's doing with everybody in the room, but we'll try our best. This is an example of treating a virtual patient on one of these systems. Come on, internet, you got this. All right, here she is. Okay, so for this one, I need a volunteer. Somebody with a cell phone. One person. Yes. All right, you're gonna have to snap a QR code. So, all right. So basically, what this is this is a Botox trainer. So if you're familiar with how Botox works, you have all these muscles in the face, and well, here I'll get you on the system while I explain it. So here, sorry, what's your name?
Anthony.
Anthony. All right, Anthony. What I want you to do, Anthony, and just Anthony, none of the rest of you. This is just for Anthony. Anthony, snap that QR code, please. Okay, so if you're familiar with how Botox works, basically you're very precisely injecting this drug into specific muscles to paralyze the muscles that cause wrinkling. Do you see this on your phone yet?
Yep.
All right, great. So you see this on your phone. Oh, she's getting a little crunchy here. Thank you, Internet. Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Botox, pick a muscle. Oh, not the eye. This is like the classic mistake that everyone makes with Botox. Is if you inject her in the eye, that's the eye muscle you don't want to do, because now she's not going to be able to see anything for 3 months. Okay, well, here, I'll give you another one. Sorry, so we can pick, yeah, so pick another one. Maybe like on the, get the wrinkling. Yeah, do the chin. There you go. All right, so you can see now the wrinkling is a little bit subdued. Let's try a facial expression that's a little bit more. Okay, doing a little. But this is an example. So instead of, this is an example of you can train HCPs at scale to really develop that mental model of how different muscles correspond to different facial movements. A round of applause for Anthony. Well done. Yeah, see, now you can go, now go, you can make a lot of money doing Botox injections these days. It's impressive. Okay, so we're looking at all this cool technology, but the important thing to remember, we're talking about video game technology, is all of it is in the service of something way more important, and that is the neuroscience of video games. Over the last 30 years, the video games industry has developed this incredibly deep discipline that we've tested on over 1 billion unsuspecting humans. We have distilled the neurochemical recipe for changing behavior and driving learning at scale among any audience. And the methods we use have very, very interesting relationships to the way we train AI. So in the video games industry, we have figured out how to trigger specific reward centers in the brain at the right frequency to trigger dopamine release to drive learning and drive behavior change. And the example I use for this is Angry Birds, because you've all played Angry Birds, right? Who hasn't played Angry Birds? Good. All right, because it's been 10 years, so if you haven't and you're hiding, that's your homework. Okay, so why is Angry Birds so addictive? I was literally, like, while people were waiting for the flight last night because everything's delayed, people were playing Angry Birds. Why is this? Because we've evolved to play Angry Birds. What do I mean by that? I want you to think back to the first time you played Angry Birds. What happened? Angry Bird hops in the slingshot. You aim it at the Tower of Pigs. You fire. What happened the first time? Anybody remember? You missed. You missed. Why? What happened when you missed? The pigs laughed at you. Why? This is totally gratuitous. Why is this? It's very deliberate. Because that made you frustrated. So the second bird hops in. You aim a little better. You fire. And you still miss. You get more frustrated. And then the third bird hops in, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm starting to get the hang of this. You aim a little better, you fire, and what happens? It's glorious. You hit the tower. There's explosions, animations, sound effects. The music changes. The pigs go flying, right? Why? All of this was deliberately designed to trigger a dopamine release in your brain that physically reinforced those neural pathways you used on that last successful fire. This is why 2 hours later, you're firing that bird between 2 narrow obstacles at 50 meters, and why 80 hours later, you're still playing the damn game. Now, we didn't invent this neuromechanic in the video games industry. It's existed in the mammalian neuron for tens of millions of years. This is, in fact, how our ancestors learned how to throw a spear, right? Miss, 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 frustration, frustration, hit. Okay, dopamine. What are the neural connections we just used on that last successful throw? Make those thicker, we want to use those again, right? This is how humans learn. Now, Angry Birds is helping you develop a mental model of parabolic flight to train you how to predict it. But these principles offer the best methods to help humans develop mental models of complex systems and also to train AI. So what we've discovered at Level X and Relevate now Relevate Health games, is we can unleash these same mechanics on HCPs and patients, and they are extremely effective. We've basically built a series of MLR-compliant video game mechanics that have been played by anywhere from tens of thousands of HCPs to hundreds of thousands of HCPs across just about every major therapeutic area. So when we think about diagnosing a rare disease, for example, that's a reductive reasoning puzzle. When we think about managing a difficult patient over time, balancing multiple comorbidities, complex side effects, understanding the benefits of escalating therapy earlier. All right, what is that? That's a strategy game. And when you get it, well, the way it works in the game is when you get it, right after trying again and again, we time all the special effects and everything else to trigger a dopamine release that reinforces the neural connections that you used when you prescribed the right brand, when you ordered the right test, when you identified which patient is indicated correctly. What does that do? That makes those neural connections thicker. Right? So the next time the doctor encounters a patient like that, that will trigger recency bias. That will trigger certain behaviors. The dopamine is what is increasing the thickness of those neural connections. This is exactly how we train artificial neural networks when we train AI. Right? AI gets it wrong, gets it wrong, gets it wrong, gets it wrong, gets it right. Okay, wait. Increase those parameter values. Make those virtual neurons thicker. This is precisely how ChatGPT was trained. The same idea. It's just simulated neurons instead of real ones. And we can use those simulated neurons in ChatGPT to solve some of the gnarliest technical problems in pharma and healthcare. We have already been doing it for a long time in the video games industry. And I'll show you an example that spans both. So there's this misperception that GenAI's main value in, let's say, engineering and technical problems is replacing the engineering grunt work, right? The work you were going to outsource to East Asia anyway. And yeah, you can do that. But it's actually, I think, a lot less interesting. What we found is that GenAI allows you to solve your hardest technical problems in orders of magnitude less time. I apologize in advance. I'm going to skip over a lot of technical detail. I'm always happy to talk about this over drinks later. But suffice it to say, simulating light bouncing around a scene is very complicated and very compute intensive, but it is really important for complex materials like skin, whether you're making a realistic character in a video game or you're trying to train dermatologists. This is why older movies that had less compute power to work with, their characters all looked like cheap plastic, and today they look great. And in games, the problem is much harder than movies, because in movies, I got 6 hours to make a frame, and in video games, whether it's for doctors or patients, I have to generate 60 frames a second. Now, 25 years ago, about 20 years ago, the team at Microsoft Research was tasked with figuring out how to do this. Smooth real-time shadows, we call subsurface scattering, light bouncing around skin, on the newest Xbox console, the Xbox 360. And they actually figured out a crazy way to do it. They called it pre-computed radiance transfer with spherical harmonics. I'll spare you the math. Bottom line is it's shared with quantum mechanics, again, over drinks. But conveniently, your phone today, we make a lot of games for phones, has the same power as your Xbox 360, even a little more. So I was eager to have Relevate Health games use this to create more realistic patient skin in games. And we wanted to integrate this in our games, so we estimated it to be about 6 months of work. And with AI, we're able to do it in a weekend. Here are some highlights. Hey, ChatGPT. Write code, don't worry about the tech, the answers are funny. Write code to rotate a 6-order spherical harmonic vector. ChatGPT goes, well, to rotate a 2nd order is easy, but a 6th order is a complex task that requires a deep understanding of spherical harmonics. And I say, shut up, ChatGPT, do it. And she says, okay, fine, here's the math, but like in order to actually solve this so you can use it, we need to figure out the Wigner D matrix. ChatGPT, you have a Mathematica plugin. Shut up and do the math for me. And within a weekend, you have the whole thing, boom, up and running on real patient data. And so the reason you should think about this is think about all those old technical problems that you've shelved at your company because they were too hard or too risky or would take too long. Open up those filing cabinets again, because those problems may be the equation to calculate how hard a problem is to solve. The inputs are now totally different. And so what I want to use is an example of what happens when we release all of these elements, game design, technology, and AI, on a specific disease state. And so first, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Running video game companies is not my primary job. It's my second job. My primary job is I'm a pancreas. So 5 years ago in 2019, my 5-year-old daughter JoJo was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I don't know if you're familiar with type 1 diabetes, but the new patient experience is abject terrible. On Friday, your life is normal, and then on Saturday, you're responsible for injecting precisely calculated doses of a lethal drug into your kid like 20 times a day. Get it wrong in either direction, and she's in a coma. But don't worry, because after 48 hours in the best hospital in the Chicago area, they give you this, which is what I call your guide to not killing your own kid. Yeah, you want to talk about like really bad patient experiences? There is no shortage of them, and there's no shortages of problems to solve. So this is what they give you. I'll zoom in. Remember, this is like Lurie Children's. All right, we got scribble down carbohydrate to insulin ratios, because every carb she eats, you need to dose insulin for. Rounding rules, correction factors, always give insulin for carbohydrates before eating. Only give a correction dose if it's been at least 3 hours since the last rapid-acting insulin dose. Why? What does this even mean? Okay, so I'm a Stanford-trained computer engineer. I'm married to a pediatrician, right? We're the diabetes dream team. It still took us like months to actually develop that mental model of how this whole system actually works. And that was 6 months of play, keep in mind, right? But it's play, which is trial and error on your own kid, which sucks. And this is stupid, so we fixed it. So we launched this earlier this summer. It's a game. It's called Level 1. It uses particle puzzle mechanics to train your brain how to manage type 1 diabetes. Kind of notice it looks like Candy Crush. Why? Because everybody plays Candy Crush, from 8-year-olds to grandparents. Each level takes about 3 minutes to play. There's about 60 levels. It teaches you everything you need to know about how to dose insulin, deal with exercise, count carbohydrates, everything. It takes you a few hours instead of months. The game is super easy to play. There's 2 buttons. You play it with your thumb. Food comes in. You dose insulin. Insulin activates cells. And you've got to balance the insulin and blood glucose as your food digests. So this way, no parent has to struggle for months doing trial and error on their own kid like we all had to do 6 months ago. And so this has basically immediately become the go-to onboarding tool for newly diagnosed diabetics in the US and around the world. We've had, I think we launched it at the end of the summer or beginning of summer. We have like 26,000 newly diagnosed type 1 diabetics and their caregivers playing. So like, we fixed it. We fixed it. And you know, I don't actually know who's in the audience, but if any of your companies happen to have brands, we're looking for sponsors to support localization to Spanish and introduce their products to newly diagnosed type 1s. So if your company has any diabetes brands, don't argue with Baby JoJo and sponsor the game. Okay, but now let's talk about AI. So next problem. Every morning when I send my daughter to school with lunch, I have to provide the nurse with a precise count of all the carbs in her lunch with a photo, because she doesn't always eat her whole lunch, if you're familiar with that problem. So I have to weigh everything individually and send her a photo with the little note at the top detailing the carb counts. So what does this mean? After 5 years of this, I have hundreds and hundreds of photos of lunches and carb counts. It is the perfect data set to train an AI with in my basement. So now, I don't have to weigh strawberries anymore. I can just take photos with my phone and it will calculate the carbs for me. So in the world of AI, you would be shocked at how what you thought was a useless data set can now be repurposed to create real value. Next problem. You know the carbs. What about the 24 dosing parameters that you need to set? And they change through the course of the day as your kid grows. Your daughter's blood sugar is going high after lunch at school every day. Should we adjust the basal rate? Should we adjust the sensitivity factor, carb ratio? You call the endocrinologist, and the way she figures it out is just trial and error. It's alchemy. It's terrible. So not anymore. So I got 5 years of blood sugar data and insulin data from a pump. So great. So train an AI to predict blood glucose dynamics, and now you can just insert her sensor data and it tells you what the ratios and correction factors should be. Because through a combination of video game technology, game design, and AI, we're gonna freaking fix this stuff. There is no shortage of problems to solve, and the tools to do this are all readily available. And so while we've been talking about, let's say, skin cancer and diabetes, before we end, I want to share what I think is the most important application of generative AI in healthcare. And especially because this is a marketing conference, I think this is the most important audience to hear it, which is that I'm thrilled to officially pronounce the death of cheesy medical stock photography. You all know the problem. In this website, he's a dermatologist. On this website, he's a colorectal surgeon. I don't even know what she is. Enough. There's no excuse for this anymore. Now, and I have generated these images like a year ago. It's way better. I can create a doctor in any lighting environment with any mood, any specialty, any ethnic background, any facial expression. I don't want to see any more cheesy medical stock photography ever again. And if you're like, well, but she doesn't move, you can animate whatever you want using AI. It is very easy. Create any character, and you can have it speak in any voice, talk with any face, animate in any way you want. There's no excuse. Okay, so 3 things you should do following this talk. All right, so first off, you know those hard engineering problems at your company that you wanted to solve years ago, but it was too hard or too risky? Open up that file cabinet, because with AI, what makes an engineering problem hard or easy is a completely different equation than it was even a year ago. Second thing, while you're opening up the old file cabinets, also check for large data sets that you forgot about. There are many, many opportunities, whether that's images, whether it's just time series data, whatever it is, there may be opportunities to take that data, whether it's structured or unstructured, and use it to train useful AI. And lastly, if you want to rewire not AI, but a human brain, using some of the same methodologies, change the behavior of a patient or an HCP, change the way they dose, the way they diagnose, the way they think about clinical study data, the way they treat, reach out to us. We have a game for that. So here, this is me. Follow me on LinkedIn. We don't know where all this generative AI is going to lead us. Is it going to lead us to the apocalyptic future, or where we all know what that looks like? We've seen movies, or the utopian future where AI solves our problems, like colonizing Mars and climate change. The best way I think we can influence whether it goes the utopian or dystopian direction is making sure that the good people, the altruists, the people who've dedicated their lives, for example, to improving healthcare, are the ones using it. Because if we don't, because we're all incapacitated by our existential angst, we're not going to slow down the evolution of AI, right? And the bad actors will use it. They are using it already. So if we want to arc it in the right direction, then we all need to be using it. So this is our best bet, right, is making sure the good people get over their existential angst and just start using it. If you have questions about how to do that, feel free to reach out, and happy to talk about it. We're always posting interesting things happening at the intersection of healthcare, video games, and AI. Thank you very much. And thank you. Very good. This is very rare. I have a minute left. We can do questions. Did we put them on the iPad, or you can just, there's like 14 of us in here. You could just raise your hand. Yes?
I don't want to say that's incredible, truly amazing. Thank you, and the amazing problem you solved. Nothing beats working on a problem that's truly close to heart. So that was an incredible story. My question was, can you see a future where patients can not only learn more about their condition and understand their condition through games, but see a world where my unique scans and radiology imaging that I approve can be uploaded and configured in a game, so I can play a game that's literally based on imaging in 3D specific to my own radiology versus a one-size-fits-all character in a game. Would we ever get there?
So
Would that be valuable?
it's in development. So Level X was actually split into two companies. So half of it is at Relevate Health. We're focused on pharma, clinical gameplay, and so forth. The other half is focused on surgery, and they're over at Brain Lab, if you know them, out of Germany. They're actually building, for example, a spine game right now, where you can, it's not for patients, but a doctor can upload a patient's scenario. It'll segment the spine, and then literally the doctor can play a level of a spine surgery video game, which takes the patient data, simulates all the biomechanics, and they can solve the biomechanical puzzle of where to cut, where to remove, where to shave the disc, what size implant to put in, and they can actually play with it. So we're getting there, but they are literally just scratching the surface. Over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be able to see this all across the board. The technology to do this exists. I think the only thing that's going to cause it to take time is there's additional regulatory considerations, obviously, when using real patient data, because there it's a treatment tool, but totally solvable. And I can tell you, talking to the folks at FDA, they're totally on board. Cool. We got to stop now, or you want another question? How are we doing? You're the boss.
Yeah, 1 more minute.
1 more minute. What do we have on the question list? Okay, how can we help patients? I answered that already. Oh, yeah, I got that one too. Okay. Yes.
How are you seeing physicians, like from a behavioral standpoint, when are they usually engaging with these tools? Is it part of like their daily workflow or at home?
So we actually measure this in close detail. It differs based on the therapeutic area. So for example, like we found a lot of, ER docs, for example, were playing at like ridiculous hours, and we found that like they were, and for specific time segments, so we found, for example, that like they were probably playing between patients. Most of it is blue jeans moments. So we find most of this is like doctors play these games generally like on their phones when they're home, when they're commuting to work. That's usually the time. Like if you just look at general play times, that's what we're seeing. But there's so many differences between specialty. I mean, we literally find that like we have measured, for example, like the attention spans of different specialties. Like for example, dermatology has like a really short attention span. Cardiology is really long. You can actually keep them for the same session length in a video game, but the quanta of like how long each level has to be much shorter for a dermatologist. So there's just all sorts of interesting insights that you get when you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of HCPs, sometimes playing literally like the same diagnosis mechanic, but in different therapeutic areas. There's a lot of really interesting insights that you can glean about how doctors make decisions, definitive insights about why they do things certain ways, things that you wouldn't get from just asking them. Because when you ask them, they'll sort of tell you what you want to know. When you actually present them with a virtual patient, especially unbranded, you get to actually glean real, actually understand how they think. It's kind of crazy. Cool. All right, now we got to end, yeah? All right, thanks, everybody.